I'm looking at these beautiful flowers and right next to it, seeing this massive weed that is about to take over. And
Mm.
I'm thinking, I have to get that weed out before it chokes out what is beautiful. And in that refinement of the weed, it's also the dailiness of refining my heart.
Welcome to The Home and the Maker, sharing advice and encouragement about all topics homemaking and homesteading, and honoring the maker in all of it. Join Megan from Shine.fm for today's conversation. One of the most dreamy things about your home, especially outside, might be the flowers that you've planted. And Jessica and her family have planted a lot of them, not for themselves, but for others, and all to glorify God. Actually, if you remember Haley from episode 2, Jessica's actually her sister. So it's exciting to have Jessica now on the podcast today to talk about what God is doing through her, her family, and their home, including their newest venture, growing flowers at their farm, Mission Farm. So thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you. I'm so excited to have this conversation today.
So tell me about Mission Farm. Flowers aren't the only thing that you're growing. There's more to Mission Farm, but tell me about how this dream began and what Mission Farm is all about.
Yeah, so Mission Farm actually started, probably was a dream starting back in 2021. But it's funny how you can look back at different versions of yourself and think if they just saw who I am today, like you wouldn't have been anything like what you thought you were going to
Yeah.
be. And so 2021, we were coming off of some health issues with our 9-month-old son. And that kind of started us down this spiral of looking into growing our own food, raising some chickens, having some honeybees, just things that we could kind of control what was going into what we were eating. And around that time, we also had friends asking us, like, hey, it'd be kind of nice if we could get eggs from you. Could we get eggs from you instead of buying them at the grocery store? And we're like, yeah, we can
Mhm.
definitely do that. So I think 6 chickens turned into like 15 chickens, turned into
Yes.
22 chickens, and one beehive turned into two beehives. And around that time, we were connected with some missionaries from our church that we just really connected with, that they're serving unreached people groups. And we thought it would be really cool if we could find some way to kind of graft together these two dreams of growing and producing our food, not just for ourselves, but for people that live near us, and also be missional about it.
Yeah.
And so our wheels started turning. We were thinking maybe we could, with the profit, turn that back around and give it towards missions. And so at the time we lived on an acre, which you can grow quite a bit on an acre.
Yeah.
But our desires were kind of changing for maybe more land. We are homeschooling. And so raising 4 kids on property and things like that. And just like, oh, maybe free range kids would be kind of nice too. And so we prayed for 3 years, chased down lots of opportunities, checked out lots of houses, and we weren't afraid of work, but like some of them, it's like, you just need to push this house on over. And so finally, about the time we just kind of surrendered, like, Lord, we think this is what you're telling us to do, but like door after door after door is closed. So, like, how do we just serve you here
Mm.
and figure out what we need to do in this space? And so we reconfigured the farm space on an acre to try to accommodate as much as we could. And within a few weeks, got a call from a family at church and said, hey, I know you guys are not, you said you're done looking, but our neighbors are actually listing their house and they're on about 7 acres. Would it be okay
Wow.
if I pass him your number? And we were like, I said something to David, my husband, and he was like, Jess, like, we've beat down all the doors. I think we just need to stay, but I'm kind of a dreamer and maybe pushed more than I should. And I'm like, let's go look. Let's
Yeah.
just go look. And so we went and looked and we bought. And so we moved on to
Wow.
7 acres at the end of August last year. So we're coming up on a year there. And the flowers came about this spring unexpectedly. We had
Hmm.
a lady from church that has ran a floral business, grew all of her own flowers and things for floral design. She said, I have to get out of this. Like, there's enough other things going on in my world. And she said, could I give them to you guys? And at first, my husband's looking at me like, surely we're saying no to this, right? We're going to say no. And I'm like, I don't think you realize exactly what it is she's offering to give us. This is an incredibly generous gift. And at some point down the road, we had thought maybe flower farming later. And within a matter of 2 weeks, we had planted 1,000 dahlia tubers, which for people
Wow.
that don't know what a tuber is, think like a small sweet potato. It's kind
Okay.
of what that's like. So David's out there working, tilling the 100-foot rows, five of them
Yeah.
3 feet wide, and planted 1,000 dahlia tubers. And now we just wait to see what's going to happen. So you're
Yeah.
catching us on the very front end of how Mission Farms is expanding and trying to just offer more variety and honestly hospitality to people that are coming onto our property. So it's a hospitable environment where people can experience God's beauty. That's been the most amazing thing about this to me is to watch the garden grow in all of its different stages and see the Lord minister to me in my heart
Mhm.
spiritually by seeing the different growth and the pruning and the weeding and all of that. But then to think now I get to invite people to enjoy this beauty here through U-picks and things like that.
Yeah.
But also to say, if we can get people excited about this, then we are able to give more to the missions and the missionaries and the unreached people groups that are close to our heart. And so,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's amazing. I love that. Just how everything all came together. I love even too, you touched on it, just like, okay, Lord, we'll steward what you've got for us right
yeah.
here. And then
Mhm.
you saw God open the doors wide. I love that.
Yes.
Um, how much care? So with bees kind of do their own thing, I guess, but with the chickens, even, as you're possibly tending to flowers, how much care does this take each day for you?
So, what I have found is working best for me right now is probably 2 to 3 trips to the garden a day
Hmm,
that are 20 to 30-ish minutes. So,
okay.
I'm obviously not like being super stringent about timing it. We're also doing a lot of learning as we go. The lady that gifted it to us is she comes out once a week or twice a week occasionally and will help show me what I need to be looking for and how to produce beautiful blooms. So whenever she pulls up, I drop what I'm doing and I'm like, show me your ways.
Yes.
And so with the current schedule with my kiddos, I also have a 9-month-old at home. It's easier to work during his nap times and say, I'm just going to run to the garden and, prune some things or pick what we have to encourage the blooms. And then when the kids go to bed at night is also a beautiful time
Mhm.
to walk out. I think we have some of the best sunsets and just like the
Uh,
peace that I feel walking out of the house out towards the gardens and seeing the backdrop that's painted, it just brings immediate peace. And so I will do as much work as I can until the sun goes down.
yeah.
As far as the animals, the kids really love the animals. And so they are like running the animal part by themselves. And my husband takes care of the bees, which they kind of do their own thing.
Yeah.
So,
That's great. That's not, as far as I'm thinking, running a whole flower farm or even just with all the other homesteading projects, it's kind of
yes.
intimidating or overwhelming. So that does not sound like too bad a load at all.
Yes, there are
Um,
definitely things that we've invested in to make it a little bit easier on us. We have bigger chicken feeders, we have a
mm,
bigger chicken run so they can forage and do things like that.
yeah.
And obviously, the input with the garden was more like front loaded, getting everything in the ground, putting down weed control, and putting up like netting to support them and things. That's pretty top heavy, like on
Yeah.
the front part of the season. And I'm sure that there is more that we could be doing. Like, I'm sure that next year, I mean, I already have a running list of things that I would maybe want to address or do differently.
Yeah.
But it's been really beautiful for this season of life and what we are able to give, and how there's still like a lot of reaping that's coming from the
Yeah,
sowing.
for sure. So as far as like turning this into a business, is that intimidating I mean, is there like, I don't know how you're choosing to run this, but as far as like taxes and all that stuff, is that a lot to get into and overwhelming?
Yeah. So this year is kind of a let's see what the Lord does year. I
Hmm.
mean, obviously it's in my heart and in my dream for it to be something that becomes a substantial part of our farm. Um, My husband is more so gifted with the tax situation. He has always filed our own taxes. This also isn't the first time we've kind of dipped our toes into
Okay.
business stuff. Back when I was pregnant with my third son, we did farmers markets for a little bit with baked goods.
Hmm.
And so that doesn't stress him out as much. I think what is more challenging for me right now is if my parents did anything right, it was that they did encourage us to dream. Not saying they only did one thing right, but they encouraged us to have dreams. I watched my dad dream and chase down different things through entrepreneurship, and he always had like side things going. And so I look at this flower farm and I have so many thoughts and avenues that it can go to be a blessing. But I also have to realize that my first calling is to be a wife. I mean, it's
Hmm.
to be a follower of Jesus. Let's not
Yes.
skip that part.
Yeah.
Follow Jesus, love and serve my husband well, love and serve my children well, homeschooling, then flower farming. And so I get a lot of these ideas going, and then I feel like this pause where it's like, this isn't the season. It's not the season yet. And so I write them down. And sometimes after the kids go to bed, I will like draft out what would this look like? What would it look like if we did this kind of event? Or if we had like a lounge area and we were hosting, wedding showers? And could
Mm.
we turn this into greenhousey stuff? And so my mind definitely gets going. And I think, if anything, the challenging part sometimes is living in the season he's called you to live in and do it really well,
Yes.
knowing that he's going to call you to other seasons. And maybe what he has for you then isn't what you think he's going to have for you, but still staying with your hands open, saying, I'm going to serve you really well where I am right now. And when the doors open, I'm ready to step there. I'm ready to say the next yes.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say that's more challenging than coming up with the ideas in the organization. I love the administrative part of things too.
Yeah.
Tracking and organizing and all of that is fun for me.
It's like,
So
girl, you just like, man, hit home for me as far as the like wanting to dream and doing the dreaming. But wow, just being okay and at peace and just really being faithful with where he's planted you now. That's
yeah,
good
yeah.
stuff.
It's hard. I say it
Yeah.
because I've been there and tried to plan and live for the next season, and it leads to burnout really, really fast. And
Mhm.
I just want to faithfully serve him in the season that I'm in
Yeah.
and be content there.
I love that. With the beekeeping, you started that in 20, what year did you say you started that?
I think that was a 2022
Okay.
summer project.
Wow,
Yeah.
so you've got that going for like 3 years.
Yes.
Um, Tell me, so you started that thinking honey maybe for your family, but did you ever imagine like was this kind of thinking, okay, someday we will have a flower farm, or is this like, okay, you're growing your own vegetables, I'm guessing.
This year we took off from vegetables because
Okay.
tubers became our life. Our dahlia
Yes.
tubers like completely took over. And I'm like, I have so many friends with gardens that are always ditching
Yes.
cucumbers and zucchinis and tomatoes on me. So I'll just live off their garden this year and I'll grow them pretty bouquets in
There you
exchange.
go. The whole
Yeah.
barter system.
Yeah, so with the bees, we would love to have honey. Some of my son's health things that he struggled through when he was around 9, 10 months old were more like allergy sensitivities. It wasn't something that was super medically serious as far as intense allergies, but we were just trying to think what kind of things in his sphere can we help with. And we had heard that honey, if you have seasonal local honey near you, is helpful. We also had talked about for a while he lived on duck eggs instead of
Hmm.
chicken eggs because he had issues with chicken eggs. But as his gut healed, we're able to switch him back to chicken eggs. So our bees, sad story, when we moved last fall, didn't survive the move.
Oh
So
no.
we actually had to start over bees this spring. And
Okay.
it was kind of one of those, I don't know if we're going to do bees yet. Maybe that's a next year thing. And we got a call from a friend from church that said, I have a beehive or a bee swarm that settled in a bucket on my construction site. Can David come get this? And so David went in his beekeeper suit and all of that and got them back to our farm. And so we have a
Wow.
beehive that settled on a construction site. And so we're super thankful for it. And they were super thankful for David coming and taking care of the bees. So we're
Yeah.
glad to have bees again, but I'm not thinking there'll be
Yeah.
a honey yield for a little bit longer than what we're expecting.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay. So I would ask if you've noticed any change, like, because I've heard that before too with the honey, as far as helping with the allergies. Like, was it still too early at that point to notice if it made any difference?
yeah, it took him a while. I don't think I realized how much his gut was an issue.
Mm,
So it took multiple different elimination things. We eliminated several of like the common things, meat, milk, soy, wheat, all of those, and chicken eggs. And then slowly, as we healed his gut, we're able to introduce it. I wouldn't say it didn't matter. It was probably a part of the big piece of the puzzle,
yeah.
but it took kind of all of those things to kind of get his body back to a place of health. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure that all of those things were a factor.
Gotcha. Now, switching gears a little bit, I saw on your Instagram you guys have dabbled with maple syrup. Tell me about that
Yeah.
experience. I'm like, that is so cool.
Yeah, so part of the whole we're embracing where we're living when we were on 1 acre, and we're just going to be happy and content here where he's called us to be. We had 3 maple trees in our backyard, and I thought, I wonder if we could do maple syrup.
Yeah.
Had no idea what that process entailed. So David's out there in a February freezing cold day drilling into the trees. I did not realize it takes 40 gallons of the tree sap
Hmm.
boiled down to equal 1 gallon of maple syrup.
Wow.
And so it was an extensive process. And I think we ended up with maybe like 3 cups of maple syrup. And so it was so good. But
Yeah.
what I loved the most about it is that then we built this raging fire out in the middle of winter, boiled down the sap. The kids are roasting hot dogs and s'mores, all bundled up
I
with like
love
their
it.
winter coats and hats on. So it got us outside in the winter and was super fun. So I knew when we moved, and I have 3.5 acres of trees, I'm like, there's got to be maple trees. We're going to do this
Yeah.
again. David's like, all right, I think we can handle, 15 to 20 taps. That's what we'll do. And we'll see what we can get. And it is a process to get all the taps put in and then collect them. We actually collected them in big bags. Some people will
Okay.
collect them in buckets. And so we harvested the sap, but every couple of days you have to boil it down based on temperature. And again, David kind of built this fire pit, and the kids and I are sitting out there roasting our hot dogs and our s'mores. And it's a fun excuse to be outside in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
And our yield was significantly higher this year, not enough to sell yet, but it's not that I don't have dreams of that happening
Yeah.
too. And so, but it's just kind of dipping our toe a little at a time to say, okay, how can we? David's really good at efficiency and like systems and processes. And so I can kind of float the idea out there and then him say, this is what we would need to tweak, or this is how we would need to do this to get it to this point. And so I just don't think people realize when they pick up their maple syrup at the grocery store just how
Yeah.
much work went into that one bottle. And so that has been really fun for us. We still have 2 bottles left. So considering that we boiled in March, I mean, we're still doing pretty good, but the kids use it any excuse they can to sweeten I have a daughter that's pouring maple syrup in her milk. And
Yeah.
she's like, Mom, it's maple milk. And I'm like,
Like,
I don't
no.
know if we should be doing that, but I'm sure it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been so much fun.
That's awesome. I love that. So, when you're digging into all this stuff, I mean, what are your resources? Are you just YouTubing, Googling? I mean, you have a mentor for the flowers, so that's awesome. But yeah, what are you looking to learn?
Yeah, I really love books. And I grew up reading, plowing through books week after week. And so that love has not left me. And so I will do a lot of looking. And I also like having the black and white picture or the
Yeah.
paragraph in front of me that I can mark up and
Yeah.
highlight and make notes based off of that. And so I do that. I do look to social media some. There are women out there that have been doing this a lot longer than me. And so their processes are a lot more streamlined. I have looked there for flower farming. There's a lot of women that are doing that really well. And they have tested and tried what kind of flowers not necessarily are selling well, but what's yielding well? What looks
Mm.
best in a bouquet? How am I serving my customers in a way that makes sense? And so I'm learning a lot there, especially on the flower side. The chickens have been super easy. Anybody that's like, I'm thinking about getting chickens, but I'm worried about how much work. And I'm like, they're like so easy. Don't stress about chickens. So once you get them some food and they're enclosed where the, aerial predators can't get to them, like they're golden and they'll start
Yeah.
popping out eggs for you. So
I love
yeah.
that. That's awesome. Now, with homeschooling and being a wife, being a mom, how do you manage your time for everything? Is that, I'm sure that's stressful.
Yeah.
But like on those days where you're overwhelmed, like how do you manage that?
Yeah, I have a lot of ideals in place where it's like, this is all that I want to accomplish. What I have started doing is making a list that is like my completion list versus my to-do list.
Hmm.
I look back over my day and I reflect on the things that mattered that I probably wouldn't have put on a to-do list. And that gives a sense of validation. I also think just prioritizing what actually matters again in this season.
Yeah.
I would love to feel more productive than I am, meaning I would love to have all the check boxy kind of things where I can say, oh, I accomplished this and this and this. But the reality is, a lot of my work right now is hidden. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we see the flower farm, we see the homestead. But like I said, if I go back to the priorities of loving the Lord well, loving my husband well, loving my children well, a lot of those things are not measurable.
Yeah.
And so I've had to surrender a lot of it to the fact that my life right now is just showing me and revealing to me a lot of insufficiencies or a lot of things that I can't measure up to what my hope is.
Hmm.
But if my hope is in Christ, then I'm doing all that is before me to do.
Yeah.
And so I think in some ways it's reorienting the expectations. It's really easy to hop on social media and think, well, this one's accomplishing this Costco haul today, and this one's accomplishing the sourdough bread, and this one's accomplishing like homeschooling really well. And you somehow merge them into like this ideal person, and you keep thinking, well, I need to be like all of those women. And it's
Yeah.
like, nope, I don't. I need to be present in my home. And so that's not a very like specific answer to what you're asking. As a practical answer, I have time blocked. I think having a good calendar is actually helpful.
Hmm.
I have a calendar that goes from 6 a.m. at night or in the morning to 8 p.m. at night. And I do block out the times, piano lessons here, art lessons here,
Yeah.
church commitment here. And then I can look at my total week and say, this is a week that these 2 or 3 days that are free, they have to be at home. They have to be invested at home, or else I start to get in this productivity spin where I'm lured away by all of these things that I think I should be doing outside of my home. And
Yeah.
then every yes that I'm saying outside of my home is kind of a no that I'm saying inside my home on time, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
It does.
So I can't just give away all this time and expect it to not cost me somewhere.
Right.
And so that has been something that since we have moved on to property and since we have had our fourth child, that all happened within a couple months, that I really have had to do some paring back of what was on the calendar and just say, this is a day that we need to reset at home and I need to get some meal prepping done. And
Hmm.
I guess finding rhythms that are working is still a work in progress for me because I'm 8 months postpartum. And
Yeah.
so I think having plans is a good thing, but also holding them loosely to say, like, how is this day going to flow with four kiddos in the house?
Yeah.
And, but again, still trying to be a good steward of your time and do things as well and as excellent as you can.
Yeah.
So,
I
Yeah.
love that. Thank you for that. Last question. Always love to, like, my last question is always focused on God. And for this one, I remember seeing something you posted on Instagram about how, like, as you're seeing things grow, and you kind of touched on this before, but whereas I think for me personally, I would see something and think of like the beauty of creation and God and how he made this beautiful thing and how amazing it is that it grew out of, in my mind, nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you also see the heart for the nations in that. So like when you see a flower, tell me about like what goes through your mind as you're seeing like, man, God, this is beautiful, but you're also showing me a heart for the nations through this.
Yes. If anything, I feel like in him revealing his beauty, I'm looking at these beautiful flowers and right next to it, seeing this massive weed that is about to take over. And
Mm.
I'm thinking, I have to get that weed out before it chokes out what is beautiful. And in that refinement of the weed, it's also the dailiness of refining my heart, and reminding me repeatedly what is important and what is true. And I think if we get too caught up in the weeds, the literal weeds or
Yeah.
the spiritual weeds, we're missing the fact that there's a whole portion of the world that does not even have the opportunity to know
Mhm.
the name of Jesus.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, okay, I just heard a missionary speak on this. You can be a missionary and you can be missional. Like a missionary, somebody called out and over or away to something and
Yeah.
living missionally. And as for my husband and I right now, we don't feel called to be missionaries to another part of the world or to an unreached people group. But how do we take what God has put right in front of us and say, this needs to be missional? We have to live on purpose.
Yeah.
And so to connect that to the weed is if I'm not diligent in pulling out what is ugly in my own heart, if I'm not diligent about spraying the neem oil on the plants to rid the bugs, then that beauty is devoured and it's overtaken. And it maybe goes back to your question of talking about scheduling and planning and things. I also see that with like not guarding my calendar and becoming consumed with all of these. When I say worldly, I don't necessarily mean bad, but like this
Yeah.
just worldly, I'm living very much for what is right in front of me versus what God is calling me to see and to be intentional with right now. And so obviously we're not perfect at this. Like it's wonderful that we have the opportunity to attempt to make money to give extra to the nations, to the unreached people groups, so that it keeps our focus oriented on what it should be instead of caught in the weeds.
Yeah. I love that. That's so good. Because yeah, it's so easy to live for what's right here, what's in front of me, but forget to have that kingdom mindset. So
Yeah.
that's beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Jessica. If someone was to want to learn more about your farm, do they just go to Instagram? Mission Farm is what they search for,
Yeah,
right?
we're on Instagram, missionfarm.in. And then we're also for Indiana. And then we're also on Facebook the same
Okay.
way, missionfarm.in. And you can find information about You Pick Saturdays there. We also are offering private events if you want to like schedule the garden for you and your girls or whatever for an evening, and then flower subscriptions as well. So if it's not easy to get to the farm, we can bring them to you. And so, yeah.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for sharing, for your wisdom. Yeah, just for all the goodness that you shared. Thank you so much.
Of course, it was good to talk to you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Home and the Maker podcast. And for other podcasts from Shine.fm, visit the Shine.fm podcast channel.